I'm full and I should stop and I'm not. So I want to look at why is that happening? And I don't know that I've been able to get to the root of that yet.
That is the listener question that I'm going to coach you through today. So if you struggle with knowing you're full, knowing that you should stop, and that if you keep eating, it's probably not going to feel good, but you can't stop and you don't know why that keeps happening. If you often feel really full, especially at night, like nighttime tends to be your overeating period, and you want to understand why that keeps happening and uncover your blind spots, this episode is made for you. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. What you're about to hear is a conversation that I couldn't not share. So this summer of 2023, I hosted these group coaching over coffees every Friday morning where I would hop on Zoom and I would talk to women in my community because I truly just love coaching people. I love helping them see their blind spots and helping you understand why you do the things that you do so that you can actually make a change. I'm no longer hosting those group sessions. However, I still love doing these coaching over coffee sessions for the podcast. And I know that you love them too, because I get a lot of DMs and emails about it. So if you are someone who wants to win a chance to be on the podcast and to get coached through whatever you're struggling with, whether that's binge eating, overeating, food guilt, body image, habit formation, then there is still a possibility for you to do so. So every once in a while, I will hop into my bank of applications for coaching over coffee, and I will see good questions that I get and invite my listeners to be on the podcast and to get a free coaching session with me. So if you want to fill out an application and possibly win a free coaching session with me, then you can go to sabrinamagna.com/coaching over coffee, and you'll also find that in the show notes. But today I'm going to play a clip from one of those coaching sessions of that question that you heard at the beginning of the episode. So without further ado, let's get into answering that question: what to do when you know you're full, you can feel it in your body, and you just can't stop yourself from eating. We uncovered a lot of invisible things that we're running on a subconscious level, things that we don't realize affect our eating habits, our cravings at the end of the day, rules, the difference between a food rule and a food preference, and so much more. It's such a good conversation. So I'm just going to play that clip for you.
I'm still finding, even though, I am aware of the hunger scale, there are still many times when I'm full and I should stop and I'm not. So I want to look at why is that happening? And I don't know that I've been able to get to the root of that yet. I'm trying to decide, why is that happening? And what can I do about it? And how can I assure myself that, I tell myself, well, it'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there tomorrow. What can I do to maybe transition from my meals, I guess.
Do you have specific examples that we can work through? Because that can definitely help me figure out what the root cause of that would be.
Okay. So, well, for example, I finish dinner and then my husband takes a long time to eat. He's a big eater. So I'll usually sit down with, whatever I wanted, my dessert or whatever after. And then, I get up and I go do the dishes. And then I'm trying to work in the kitchen and get the dishes done. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll have a little piece of a cookie and then I'll have a little more piece of a cookie. And so I find myself doing that and it's not mindful.
Okay. So this is usually after dinner that this happens?
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned that you usually like to have a dessert after dinner.
Yeah.
And does it often happen that you're doing it as you're doing something else, as you're standing, it's more mindless? Or,
No, no, I sit right down. I've been sitting down with my coffee and I am trying to really enjoy it.
okay.
I still have that fear of it won't be there, or I think I still am feeling like it may be scarce, and I don't know why.
Okay. So is there specific food like cookies, for example, or
Yeah,
any kind of sweets?
yeah. I like to bake. I really love to cook.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like right now there's the chocolate chip cookies I made in the cabinet. Um, and it's funny because I like the chocolate part of it.
Yeah.
I go like take the chip part and eat it. Um, yeah, so that's what's there right now.
Okay. And what time do you normally eat dinner?
Depending on when my husband gets home, I try to eat sometime between 5:30 and 6:30 at night. I don't like to eat real late.
Okay. And then do you eat your dessert right after dinner?
I do. I like to have it then. Yeah.
And then after your dessert, is that usually the last thing that you eat for the night?
It is usually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Oh, probably because, at some point, you know, I learned that you should fast for the rest of the night. There you go.
Yeah.
You're learning a lot about me today.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why I'm asking these specific questions is because I have a pretty good idea of where this is usually going because I used to have these same rules, right?
Yeah.
So for me, dinner, last meal of the day, and you're not eating after 8 p.m. And I had all of these rules. And the thing about that is that you could have a preference, right? I don't usually love to eat late because I don't love going to bed with a full stomach. It affects my sleep. It usually feels better to stop eating like an hour or two after dinner.
It
So,
does, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that could be a preference. Absolutely. But you know that there's a rule underneath it when it affects your ability to break that rule and to honor your body. And it makes you feel anxious around certain things. Do you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it does. It feels like that last meal mentality, and I'm not going to be able to have anything until the morning. And I often feel really full at night.
Yeah.
And like even last night, I'm like, oh, this is going to digest for a long time. So yeah, I do feel that way.
So I actually posted a podcast episode about this, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it was one of the top reasons why we overeat. And I was talking about a personal experience of what I used to do. So I used to have a rule where after 8 p.m. you don't eat. So like I had rules about timing. So 9 a.m. was breakfast, noon was lunch, 3 was snack, 6 was dinner, and nothing else after 8. And I usually like to wake up and work out first thing in the morning. So this was all happening super subconsciously, right? You're not thinking about it. But when I was having my last meal of the day, what I would be telling myself is this is the last time that you're eating until after your workout tomorrow morning. So you better eat enough so that you're not waking up in the middle of the night starving, or so that you have energy for your workout tomorrow. And because I had set these rules for myself, I would end up overeating at dinner. This was all happening without like my conscious awareness because I was trying to like make sure I get enough food for the 12 hours that I'm about to have without it. Does that sound?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's usually what happens, right? And there's like a lot of like different buckets of rules, but I can see where you tend to have your rules, which are very similar to the kind of rules that I used to have. And so when you're eating dinner, you know that when's the next time that you're going to eat?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm trying to honor my hunger in the morning. Um, and I do, if I can work out before, before my day starts, I do. So usually after that.
Okay. So I want you to imagine this scenario where you just ate dinner, you had your amazing cookie, and after your cookie, where are you on the hunger scale at that point? Are you comfortable? Are you satisfied?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty, plenty.
Oh, oh.
Yeah.
And then it's afterwards that you start kind of snacking on some things
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
brings you.
I'm trying to get the kitchen cleaned up and, I'm puttering and getting that all done. And then the wheels are spinning and, oh, and they have a little more cookie. And yeah.
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 So what I want you to try doing is you had dinner, you had your cookie, right? Now you're at a comfortable 5, 6 on the hunger scale. And then I want you to start, and you're going to have to start doing this mentally, but also you might have to start doing it like actually physically, allowing yourself to eat again that night.
Okay.
So let's say you have when you're done your last cookie, what time is it around?
6:30.
6:30. Okay. So now, and what time do you go to bed?
Usually about 10.
Okay. So of course you feel the need to eat just a little bit more because between 6:30 and 10, you're not getting anything, right? So
Well, 6:30 and then all the way around.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
imagine in that moment you're done, and instead of saying, okay, well, just eat a little bit more, right? And then I won't eat for the rest of the night. You said, all right, I feel really comfortable now. I had the thing that I wanted. If hunger strikes again, or if I have this craving for a cookie, I'll have one later, right? There's no longer rules around what time I'm allowed to eat. If I want to have this food again, even if it's an hour from now or 2 hours from now, I can have it later. And what that does is, let's say you do want to have it later, then you're recreating trust between you and your body. And at the same time, you're training your body to know that dinner no longer means I overeat, right? Because does it often happen that you feel like at dinner, you tend to eat a little bit more than what feels comfortable for
I
you?
do. I definitely do. Yeah, like
Yeah.
last night I felt that way and I still have dessert anyway because I
Yeah.
love dessert. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you've trained your brain to know that dinner is a time where I tend to eat more than what feels comfortable. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and you just start to expect it. And it becomes this neural pathway that you get in the habit of doing. But if you look at, let's say, your breakfast or your lunch, do you feel like those are meals that you tend to be able to eat till you're comfortable and feel good about it? It's not as difficult.
Yeah, I would say it's not as difficult at all.
Do you know why?
Well, I think part of it has to do with by that time of night, I'm tired for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I've created tension during the day. And I also think that I'm thinking it's going to be a very long time before I eat again. So I better keep eating.
Yeah.
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 So that's a great idea. I can try to, eat again if I need to.
Yeah. So I would say we just definitely got to the root cause of it, but there's not just one root cause of it, right? So I want to summarize it and I want you to also write these things down. Okay.
I have my paper here.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want you to ask yourself is this coming from physical hunger? Meaning, am I eating enough during the day? Because if you're not, and this is something, so I realized in the past couple of weeks that I am getting really hungry in the afternoon. Like usually I have my snack around 3 and then I'll have my dinner around 6. But what I'm noticing is that I'm now needing to have my snack around 2 and then I have a second snack around 4 and then I eat dinner around 6. And I was like, that's super interesting. I wonder why. Like I haven't been working out that much harder. And so I wonder why. So I was talking to Luke about it and I was like, I'm going to try to eat more earlier on in the day. I'm going to eat a bigger breakfast, even though I'm already eating like a pretty big breakfast. I'm going to eat an even bigger breakfast and then a bigger lunch. So I did that yesterday and I didn't need to have my second snack in the afternoon. And I noticed I just feel much better. And so asking yourself, am I eating enough during the day? And is this coming from biological hunger? So that's one question you want to ask yourself. The second thing that you talked about is I don't have as much of a hard time for breakfast and for lunch. And that's probably because also you know that you're going to eat again, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that food is going to be available again.
Yeah.
And at dinner, food is going to be available to you if you want to, right?
Yeah, it
Like
will.
your brain doesn't realize that this restriction and this rule is self-imposed, right? So your
Yeah.
brain is really like, your brain is super powerful, but our brains are kind of dumb. So they will take in whatever information we give to them and they'll run with it. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you've given them a rule that after a certain time you don't eat, well, then they think food is not available. And if food is about to be scarce and restricted, well, I'm going to get a little bit more in than what I need so that I'm okay until tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's definitely happening. And then, it's a little more and it's a little more and it's a little more. And, at what point, do I say enough,
Exactly. Exactly.
and when I'm not really uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So eating enough during the day is important.
And I'm not so sure I do that because, years and years and years of dieting, you restrict yourself during the day instead of getting enough
Yep.
calories in. And I do need to make sure that I have carbs because that is something that, at some point you stop having or
Yep.
and I definitely feel like I need those by lunchtime. I've got to have something that involves carbs. So I guess I really need to focus on when I'm at home, it's easy. Like I know what I want for lunch. But when you're going to work, it's that ahead of time trying to figure out, what are you going to have and whether or not you want it, you've got to have it because it's what you brought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And notice why I asked you before when you were talking about your salad, is there any carbs in your salad? Because and this is like a very classic chronic dieting trait, is not eating enough carbs. And most people will think they're eating enough carbs because the enough carbs in the diet world is so small, right? Like I used to think that if I'm having bread or pasta for one of my meals, then I've had enough carbs for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
And
I hear you on that one. I think we are very similar. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the truth is that we need carbs at every meal. We really
Mhm.
do. And more than what you think. Because at the end of the day, do you ever get cravings?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Are they cravings for high carb or high sugar foods?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And I think that there are people that, just shun carbs completely. I've never been able to do that. I don't feel well if I do that. And I do. I like my bread and
Mm-hmm.
pizza and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's something that it's kind of a process because I'm someone who used to not eat carbs as well. And I would say that like I didn't eat carbs. I would eat a few carbs, right? Like I would eat sweet potatoes and I would eat oatmeal, what I deemed as like good carbs, big air quotes there in my mind. But the truth is that over time, as I really started pushing my own limits of what acceptable amounts of carbs were, I realized that we need a lot of carbs, right? We really need, because they are our primary source of energy. And the reason why I asked you if you have cravings for sugar and for carbs at the end of the day is most likely because your body is not getting enough earlier on during the day. And so your body is super, super smart. And if it didn't get enough of that during the day, it's going to send you signals in the signs of cravings and of thoughts around certain foods to get you to feed it. And so if you're not getting enough of that during the day, of course, you're having cravings and you're likely to overeat them later on in the day.
Yeah. And that scarcity thing, I just think that I've deprived myself for so long that I just think it won't be available tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it will be.
It will be.
Yeah.
And this is something that you're going to build trust with yourself, right? Like the more you are intentional about having those foods and being intentional about breaking some of those rules that you have around food, it's going to get reinforced in your brain. Like the same way I always describe your relationship with food as the way that you would have a relationship with a friend. So let's say that you have a friend that you've been really good friends with for a long time. You have a great relationship with them. And then over time, they keep calling you and you stop answering, right? And eventually that friend is going to be like, well, screw this. I keep calling and she's not listening. So I'm going to stop calling. So in this case, your body is the same thing, right? So you were born having a great relationship with your body. When it told you that it needed food, you said yes. When it had a craving, you said yes. And then eventually along the way, some diet came along and told you, you should not be listening to your body. You should be listening to Weight Watchers or keto or intermittent fasting. And so whatever your body is saying, don't trust it. Trust me instead. And so now your body is sending you signals of hunger and cravings. And you're saying, oh, you want a donut? I'll give you grapes instead. Oh, you want to eat? I'll have a black coffee instead. And so your body eventually is like, well, screw this. She's not listening. And the only time that you'll actually start listening is when you get to that extreme, right? When you've really not eaten for a long time or you've really deprived yourself for a long time. So in this relationship with your friend, for example, how do you build trust again? Well, you start calling.
Yeah.
You start building a trust in a friendship takes a lot of time because it's really easy to lose that trust. It's not as easy to build it back up. And so when you're building that trust back with your body, it's about showing up consistently, right? You're hungry, I will feed you, right? You have a craving, I will give it to you. And at the beginning, you might be eating a little bit more of those foods that you've been depriving yourself for so long. And that's going to be that honeymoon period. And that's part of it. It does not mean that you've lost control. It does not mean that you're about to fall off the wagon. It simply means that you're working with your body to say, here, I know that you've been asking for this. For me, it was pizza. I know that you've been asking for pizza and I haven't been giving it to you. I'm going to give it to you now. And eventually, when you go through this honeymoon phase, the allure around these foods, like it's going to decrease. Now, I have no problem saying no to pizza because I know that if I want it next week, I'll have it. If I want it tomorrow, I'll have it. It's always there. But you need to go through this process of habituating yourself to that food in order to get there.
Well, and I think I've learned as I've gone along here that I can have food in the house and it's not, for a long time, I couldn't keep a container of ice cream without eating it every day. And then, it's been in there for a while now. So I'm like, okay, there's a win, or, there might be, something, I don't know, a coffee cake or something. And it can be here and I don't have to, my mind doesn't have to be on it all the time. And I don't have to have it. So I feel like I definitely, there's a lot of wins going on, but I think there's also a lot of work to do too. And I think that, the whole thing with this scale, that was difficult. And I'm so glad that I learned about that because, I would get on it and it would be like, well, the scale was down, so then I could eat more. Or the scale was up, so then I couldn't eat. And now it's like, well, the other day I was like, well, maybe I should get on the scale. And I was like, nah, I don't care. I don't care. It doesn't matter because I couldn't seem to lose weight when I was on a diet. And I certainly am not worried right now about losing weight. I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping eventually that, maybe something will fall off. But, for now, I think I just want, I want to not think about food all the time because
Yeah.
I get to the point where it's like in the middle of the night, I'm worried about what I'm having to eat the next day. And I'm thinking, this is not good.
Yeah.
Or if I'm working and it's my planning time, I'm thinking about food and I'm like, I can't get my planning done because I'm busy worried about, well, what am I going to eat next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what you brought up is a really good point. A lot of people have it backwards, right? So they start with, I want to lose weight, therefore I'm going to diet, right? I'm going to do all of the rules and I'm going to just focus on the food instead of my relationship with food. And then they think when I hit a certain weight, then my relationship with food is just going to be fine, right? Like I'm just going to snap my fingers and everything's going to fall into place and I'm going to be able to reincorporate these foods back in. And what I always say to anyone who is talking to me of like, but I need to lose weight. And what we always have to ask ourselves is, number one, has that ever worked for you? Like when you go in with the first goal of losing weight, yeah, you lose weight short term. Absolutely. But it's like there's a hole in your boat and you keep getting water into your boat and it starts sinking and you're like, I'm just going to take a bucket and I'm going to start scooping that water out. You're going to keep sinking until you plug that hole. So if you're ever wanting to start thinking about having healthier habits, right? Like you want to move your body more, you want to take care of yourself more, you want to overeat less, and you want to make healthier choices, then the first step is always going to be to heal your relationship with food. Because if you don't do that first, then it doesn't matter everything else that you try to do, you're always going to fall back into that bad relationship with food.
Yeah, there was a lot. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Um, there was a lot of starting something, then I give up, and
Yeah.
then starting something, then I give up, and now I'm done. I'm so glad to be done with dieting. I really am, and I feel like I don't know. I guess I've stopped. I'm trying to go through the positive side of it. We talked about body image, and I try to get up in the morning and I look in the mirror and I find something good to say about myself, and then I also think about how lucky I am to have the power and strength to do the things I love, the swimming, and I'm very much an outdoor person. And so I'm kind of trying to go about it from the positive and then, try to take little steps on, okay, well, all right, so you were too full last night, but you did this. And so you savored your food, you enjoyed it. I've been out a lot this week. Well, I tried to focus on the conversation rather than just eating the food and how much food I was eating and, what is it I really want? And so I guess I'm trying to take small steps in the right direction.
Yeah. And you are.
How will I know when it's all come together like it has for you?
Oh, what a question. And
And a compliment.
the truth is that intuitive eating is, I know it's so cliche, but it's a journey.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like, and this is something I think I talked about on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, is there's even some times now that I notice rules I didn't even know that I had. But the thing is that some of these thoughts might still pop up for you, right? Like, oh, this is high calorie. And the difference is that you're no longer going to have any kind of emotion or anxiety associated with them because they're going to pop up and you're just going to let them go. So what I mean by that is there's still some days where I look in the mirror and I have a bad body image day. And in the past, when I had my eating disorder, it would have ruined my mood for the day. I probably wouldn't have gone out, right? Like I don't want to be around people. I don't feel good in my body. And now I'm able to say, I literally look in the mirror and say, today's going to be a bad body image day, and it's not going to affect anything that I do. I'm still going to go out. I'm going to wear clothes that I feel comfortable in. I'm not going to wear a super risque outfit that is super tight on me. And I'm going to live my life because I have a body to live my life, not a body that is a project for me to sculpt into looking a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so the long answer to that question is that it's always going to be a journey. But when I'm working with my clients, usually after about 3 months, what they start noticing is that it clicks in a way that they're like, okay, I completely understand that I'm on the right path now. And now I'm going to keep working through. I know my rules. I know how to work through them. I know how to get past, because we talk about the self-coaching model. I know how to get past my own blocks. I know what obstacles I'm going to have. And so growth, whenever we're talking about self-development, it's something that you want to continue doing, because we live in a diet culture that's always going to start trying to creep back in. So just continuing to work through these beliefs, because you have a lot of beliefs, right? You have a lot of beliefs when it comes to body image and food. And so you're just going to start working at them and chipping at them one after the other. And then eventually it's not going to be like you're going to wake up one day and be like, I'm perfectly healed. And every day you're going to start to feel better, because if you start to look at where you are now compared to a couple of months ago.
Definitely.
Much
better. Yeah. Well, and I have to say, I like the word journey, because I've been calling it struggle. Maybe I should go with journey instead of struggle. Yeah. And even I went through my closet and I'm like, why do I have this? I don't want it. I don't like it. It doesn't look good on me. It's tight or whatever. And even that felt good to just say, who cares if I can't wear this? And, when we were in college, I feel like that was really a very difficult time for me, because, we were starving ourselves, and we'd starve ourselves all week. And then Friday night we'd go and we'd overdo it, and we'd binge on the cookies or whatever. And then we'd start again. And I'm just so glad not to be starting anything again. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah.
All right. So that's a little snippet of what our coaching calls can sound like. What I really love about coaching is that all human beings have these blind spots. And as you could hear from that clip, she was saying how we notice that we have these behaviors. And what these behaviors usually are symptoms of a bigger problem. And if we knew what that bigger problem was, if we knew what the root cause of our behaviors really was, then we would have been able to fix them. And that's why it's so valuable to have an outside perspective, especially from someone who's been in your head, who has had the same food rules, who knows how you're thinking and why you're thinking it, because then it helps you gain clarity on, what am I doing wrong? What are some of the mistakes that I'm making? What am I subconsciously telling my brain, which is affecting my eating behaviors? Coaching speeds up your progress, because instead of navigating the journey alone, you benefit from the wisdom and the support of someone else who's been where you are, from a community who's going through it with you. And you learn how to navigate this path to freedom, food freedom, body freedom. You also learn to identify and address your own limiting beliefs that might be holding you back. You get guided through reframing negative thought patterns, helping you build a foundation of self-confidence, of empowerment, of knowledge about your own brain and how you work. But coaching is not for everyone, because you have to be willing to want to change the way that you think. You have to be willing to want to push against your own predetermined beliefs around food and your body. Because although those beliefs might not be serving you and they're not helping you get to the life, the dream life that you want to live, they do serve a purpose of keeping us safe and keeping us in the familiar and in our comfort zone. So if you're struggling with binge eating, overeating, stress, emotional eating, constantly obsessing over food, shame and guilt around eating, you want to stop feeling out of control around food, or you want to be coached through anything that you are struggling with when it comes to food, your body, and your relationship with yourself, and you want to enter a chance to win a free coaching session with me, like you just heard, then I invite you to head to the link in the show notes, or you can also go to sabrinamagnan.com/coaching over coffee, where you'll be able to fill out a form where you can apply for your own coaching over coffee session that will be released on the podcast. Now, just because you send out your application, it does not necessarily mean that you will get chosen, because I get hundreds of applications. However, if after looking over your form and the questions that you might have and your willingness to get coached and to be coachable, then you're picked, you'll receive an email from me that is going to give you all the details on how we can hop on a Zoom call together and get you coached and give you some guidance on how to move forward in the right direction. So reminder, it's sabrinamagnan.com/coaching over coffee. My last name is spelled Magnan. It's a French name. I know it's not an easy one, but you can also find the link in the show notes. This is really a rare opportunity to get on a free coaching call with me. So if you feel alone, if you feel frustrated, if you feel stuck and keep getting in your own way, or you feel like you know what you should be doing, but you're not doing it and you don't know why, then send in your application, give it a shot, and maybe you'll be receiving an email from me soon. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Connect with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health. Subscribe to the show, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.